One mistyped number. One raw, vulnerable message sent into the void at 2 a.m. When Nia's heartbroken confession reaches Kang Miho, a dangerous Korean underworld figure covered in ink and secrets, her ordinary world explodes overnight. He arrives at her doorstep with a luxury car, a single white rose, and words that shake her to the core. Now she's trapped between terror and desire, pulled toward a man who might either heal her wounded heart or shatter what's left of it beyond repair. The text glowed on Nia's screen like a wound she couldn't close. Please come tonight. This loneliness is killing me. Hold me, touch me, help me forget until the sun rises. Her thumb trembled over the phone. She'd intended it for Daniel, the man who'd ripped her heart out 2 months back. But through tears and desperation, she'd tapped the wrong name. Now it sat there, sent, irreversible, mocking her vulnerability. The knock came 18 minutes later. 3 sharp raps that cut through the silence. Nia's heart stopped. Her hands turned to ice. She forced herself toward the door, mind screaming warnings she couldn't fully process. When she pulled it open, the man standing there stole her voice completely. He was Korean, tall, devastatingly handsome. Tattoos crawled up his neck, vanishing beneath the collar of his perfectly tailored black suit. His frame filled her narrow doorway like he owned the building. Dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her skin burn. Behind him, a gleaming midnight blue Lamborghini idled at the street, headlights slicing through Seoul's darkness like twin knives. "Nia," he said. His voice was velvet wrapped around iron, smooth yet lethal. "You sent me something." She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She'd never laid eyes on this man in her entire life. Hours earlier, Halloween in Seoul had buzzed with energy. The streets overflowed with people in costumes, couples wrapped around each other under lanterns, kids clutching candy. None of it reached Nia. She'd spent her evening cleaning the tiny nail salon where she worked, acetone and polish fumes soaking into her clothes. Her coworkers had invited her to join them, but she'd smiled softly and said no. Celebrations felt empty when your heart was still broken. In her cramped studio, she'd curled up on her thin mattress, eyes fixed on the crack in the ceiling. The city hummed outside, alive and indifferent. Her mind kept returning to Daniel, how he'd touched her, the sweet lies he'd whispered, the coldness in his face when he disappeared. He'd been her anchor in this foreign country, her escape from the suffocating isolation of being a Kenyan woman in Korea. But eventually, she'd been nothing more than an exotic experiment to him. Another rich Korean man chasing novelty he could abandon when the thrill faded. Still, the ache wouldn't stop. The hunger clawed at her chest until she couldn't bear it. She grabbed her phone, found his contact, and started writing. "I can't keep doing this. Everything aches without you. I don't care what happened between us. I don't care how badly it ended. I just need to feel your arms one more time. I need you to love me the way I still love you despite everything." Her vision blurred with tears. She kept going, reckless now, pride abandoned. "Tonight I need you to touch me until I can't remember my own pain. Make love to me until this emptiness finally disappears." She pressed send before she could reconsider. Then she buried her face in her pillow and waited for the shame to drown her. Instead, someone knocked on her door. Now she stood face to face with a stranger whose gaze seemed to pierce straight into her soul. His expression wasn't predatory. It wasn't cruel. It was something else entirely. Something that twisted her stomach in knots. "You didn't mean to send that to me, did you?" His mouth curved slightly. Almost a smile, but not quite. Her lips parted. Closed again. She shook her head slowly. "I think there's been some kind of mistake." "Mistakes," he said, letting the word hang in the air, "can be the most truthful things we ever do." Her pulse thundered in her skull. "Who are you?" "Someone who read what you wrote," he answered simply. "And someone who knows exactly what that kind of loneliness feels like." Nia glanced past him at the Lamborghini. It looked absurd in front of her rundown building. This entire man looked absurd in her small, unremarkable life. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "Nothing," he said. Then something vulnerable flickered behind his steel gaze. "Your message made me think of someone I lost. My mother. She used to write things like that. Letters begging for love from a man who only knew cruelty. When she died, I swore something to myself. No woman should ever feel that invisible again. Nia's throat closed up. The quiet between them stretched, heavy and strange. He reached into his jacket and produced a key fob, extending it toward her. I don't know you, he said. But I recognize this. A woman who writes words like that deserves to be noticed. Take the car. Drive it wherever you want. Keep it. It's yours. She stared at the key like it might explode. I can't accept that. I can't possibly take that. You already gave me something, he said quietly. You reminded me why I made that promise. That's worth far more than a car. Her heart hammered against her chest. She wanted to slam the door shut. Wanted to yell at him, wanted to disappear. But another part of her, a part she barely recognized, wanted to reach for him, wanted to beg him to stay, because something about this dangerous, impossible man made her feel less alone, and that scared her more than anything else possibly could. Kang Mi-ho stood beside the Lamborghini, Seoul's cold night air cutting through his suit. Neon lights flickered in the distance, washing the broken pavement in waves of pink and electric blue. But his attention wasn't on the cityscape. It was on the message still glowing on his phone. I need you tonight. This loneliness is killing me. Come hold me, touch me, help me forget until the sun rises. The text had appeared from nowhere, cutting through his evening like a scream in silence. Initially, he'd assumed it was spam. Women didn't send Kang Mi-ho messages like this. When people contacted him, it was for deals, for power, for survival. But this message was different. Raw. Desperate. A woman emptying her heart into darkness, hoping someone might listen. For a man like him, someone who lived in shadows and violence, it was unsettling. Almost threatening. He closed his eyes and thought of his mother. She used to write letters too. Letters that were never mailed. Hidden deep in her closet, folded beneath worn clothes. Kang Mi-ho had discovered them when he was 12. Words pleading for gentleness. Words begging to be rescued from a husband who treated her like an object, nothing more. By the time she died, those letters were all that remained of who she'd been. Now, reading this stranger's message, Kang Mi-ho felt something stir inside him that he'd thought was long dead. An urge to protect someone fragile before they were crushed the way his mother had been. Inside her apartment, Nia sat on her bed's edge, hands trembling uncontrollably. She couldn't stop replaying it. The tattoos. The suit. The way his eyes had looked at her like he could read every secret she'd ever buried. Why did he come here? She whispered to the empty room. How did I even send it to him? She picked up her phone, staring at the contact. The number was so similar to Daniel's. Just one digit off. Her stomach dropped. One tiny error had brought a stranger to her door. Not just any stranger. A dangerous man. Every instinct screamed at her to block him. Delete everything. Act like this never happened. But her hands wouldn't obey, because beneath the terror, something else pulsed. Fascination. Kang Mi-ho didn't leave. He wasn't the type to walk away once something caught his interest. Instead, he sat in his car, scrolling back through her message. He found himself rereading each line as though trying to decode the woman behind them. I don't care how badly it ended. I just need to feel your arms one more time. He exhaled slowly, gripping the steering wheel. Why should it matter? He didn't know her. He wasn't meant to care. Yet every sentence echoed inside him, awakening a part of him that had been dormant for years. His phone buzzed. A text from one of his men. Boss, we're ready. The meeting's in an hour. Kang Mi-ho ignored it. For once, business could wait. Instead, he typed out a message, his fingers hesitating over the screen. He was accustomed to giving commands, issuing threats, controlling rooms. Not this. Finally, he sent it. You don't strike me as someone who should be alone tonight. The buzz of her phone made Nia jump. She grabbed it, expecting Daniel, or maybe a cruel prank. But when she read the words, her breath stopped. She stared at the message. Should she respond? Every fiber of her being told her this was reckless. She didn't even know his name. And yet she couldn't help herself. I didn't mean to send that to you. It was an accident. His reply came almost immediately. Maybe. But accidents sometimes reveal truths we're too scared to admit. Her hands shook. She typed erased, typed again. Finally, she sent, "You don't know me. You don't know anything about what I've been through." His response came within seconds. "Then tell me." "I'm here. I'm listening." That night, their conversation stretched longer than she'd planned. At first, her words were guarded, cautious. But gradually, without realizing it, Nia began sharing pieces of herself. Her work as a nail technician in Korea. How she'd arrived with dreams of building something meaningful, only to find herself stuck in endless labor and crushing solitude. How love had been nothing but pain. Men who'd used her, exoticized her, and abandoned her with nothing but scars. He didn't interrupt. Didn't flirt. He simply listened. When she finally asked, "Why do you even care?" his answer came quiet but weighted. "Because once I watched a woman I loved cry herself to sleep every single night. And nobody listened to her. Not even me. I won't repeat that mistake." Her throat tightened. Whoever this man was, he carried his own pain. She wanted to ask who he truly was. But before she could, another knock sounded at her door. This time gentler. More patient. Her breath caught. She looked through the peephole, and there he was again. Kang Mi-ho. But now he wasn't holding car keys. He was holding something else. A single white rose. When she finally opened the door, his gaze found hers, steady and unreadable. "You told me you needed someone to hold you tonight," he said quietly. "I don't know if I'm that person. But I can sit here, outside your door, so you don't have to feel so alone." Nia's chest ached in a way it hadn't in months. No man had ever said anything like that to her. Not in Korea. Not anywhere. And as she closed her door softly, sliding down to the floor with tears streaming down her face, she understood one thing clearly. Whoever this stranger was, he wasn't just dangerous. He was the most dangerous kind of man. The kind who could demolish every defense she'd built around her heart. And for the first time, she wasn't certain she wanted to stop him. Nia couldn't stop staring at the sleek Lamborghini parked outside her building. The engine's rumble still rang in her ears, impossibly loud against the quiet neighborhood. Her hands shook as she clutched the key fob he'd left behind. Smooth. Cold. Heavy in her palm. She pressed the button and the car's lights flashed in response. Her breath caught. "How did this happen?" she whispered. One wrong digit had led to this. A man she didn't know, dangerous and magnetic, now knew where she lived, knew her loneliness, and cared enough to appear. Minutes before, she'd been curled on her bed, trying to process everything. Her phone still lit up with brief messages from Kang Mi-ho. "You don't have to respond if you don't want to. But I'll stay. I'll keep watch." Her heart pounded in ways she couldn't explain. Fear. Curiosity. And something else. Something that had nothing to do with logic. Kang Mi-ho stood several meters away, leaning against a streetlight. Tattoos peeked from beneath his suit sleeves, night wind tousling his dark hair. His eyes tracked her through the window. Not threatening, but in a way that made her chest constrict. She wanted to call the authorities. Lock the door. Tell him to leave. But every survival instinct she'd relied on before felt useless now. When she finally stepped outside, cautious and trembling, he straightened. His voice was calm, measured, with an underlying edge she couldn't dismiss. "Nia," he said simply. "Not a question. A fact. I hope I didn't scare you." "You didn't." "I'm just," she paused, trying to find air, confused. He smiled faintly. A dangerous curve of his mouth that somehow felt protective. "Good. Confusion means you're starting to understand. And tonight, you need understanding." Her chest fluttered. "I don't know who you are." His eyes softened for a moment, almost regretful. "Soon you'll know me better than anyone ever has." Over the following days, Kang Mi-ho began appearing in subtle ways. Not aggressive, not overwhelming, but impossible to ignore. A coffee outside her salon, left anonymously on her station with a note. For the long days ahead. KM. A bouquet of white roses at her doorstep. No message. Just a presence she couldn't explain. Nia's curiosity burned alongside her fear. She couldn't deny the strange thrill that shot through her whenever she glimpsed him from her window. And yet the thought of who he really was, a man she didn't know, a man surrounded by shadows she couldn't see, terrified her. One evening, he appeared as she locked up the salon, leaning casually against his Lamborghini, watching her with those unreadable eyes. "You work too hard," he said quietly. "You deserve more than this life of endless exhaustion." She blinked. "Who are you really?" "Someone who understands what it's like to be trapped in a world that doesn't see you." Her stomach twisted. The ache in his voice mirrored her own loneliness. Yet it carried a weight she didn't comprehend. She wanted to ask more, but words abandoned her. He didn't press. He simply handed her another white rose and left. The growl of his Lamborghini fading into the Seoul night. Later, sitting on her bed, Nia held the flower, breathing in its delicate fragrance. Her mind raced. Every encounter with him tugged at something inside her. Fear, longing, curiosity, something dangerously close to attraction. She thought of the wrong number. The text, the confession she'd sent that brought him to her. How had one small mistake drawn a man like this into her world? And more importantly, why did it feel like he was meant to be there? By the weekend, she started noticing whispers on the street. Shopkeepers, neighbors, strangers passing by, glancing at the Lamborghini and talking in hushed voices. Kang Miho's presence did not go unnoticed. Fear and curiosity tangled in her chest. She wanted to run. She wanted to hide. But every time she tried pushing thoughts of him away, she found herself remembering his voice, his eyes, the strange calm he radiated even when danger seemed to hover close. For the first time in months, she wondered if loneliness could be something more. Something that pulled her toward him, even if danger lurked beneath. And in that quiet, uneasy tension, Nia realized something terrifying and thrilling at once. She wanted to see him again. The morning sunlight fell softly across Nia's apartment, catching the petals of the white rose Kang Miho had left on her bedside table the previous night. She stared at it, fingers tracing the delicate edges, heart racing uncontrollably. It had been days since that first knock. Days since he'd appeared outside her salon, leaning against his Lamborghini with those unreadable eyes. And yet the memory of him, dangerous, handsome, commanding, haunted her in every quiet moment. Her phone buzzed suddenly, making her flinch. A message from him. "Meet me at the Han River Pier at 7. Don't be late." The words were simple, direct, terrifying. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Her second was to delete it. But her thumb hovered over the screen, trembling. Curiosity, desire, and a strange sense of fate battled inside her. Finally, she typed back, "Where?" "Han River Pier. Be there." The hours dragged. Nia tried keeping busy at the salon, but her hands shook as she worked on nails and eyebrows. Every knock on the door, every sound outside made her heart leap. What kind of man was this? Why was he doing this for her? By 6:30, she was dressed and ready. She'd chosen a simple emerald green dress that hugged her curves perfectly, her natural curls framing her face beautifully. She tried looking composed, but inside her heart raced with nervous anticipation. The Han River Pier loomed as she arrived. City lights glittered like diamonds scattered across velvet. And there, leaning against a sleek black car at the pier's edge, was Kang Miho. Tattoos visible beneath the rolled sleeves of his crisp white shirt. Sharp pants. Polished shoes. Every inch of him screamed power and danger. Yet there was softness in his eyes when they met hers. "You came," he said simply. Nia swallowed hard. "I didn't know what to expect." "Expect nothing," he replied, his lips curving in that faint smile that made her pulse race. "Tonight you'll see only what I want you to see." They rode the elevator up to an observation deck. The city sprawled beneath them, alive and glittering. He stood close, but not too close. Just near enough that she could feel warmth radiating from him. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but her voice betrayed her curiosity. He remained silent for a moment, eyes fixed on the skyline. "Because you deserve to be seen," he said finally. "You write words like someone who's been invisible far too long. That I cannot allow." Nia felt her chest tighten. No man had ever spoken to her like this. No man had ever made her feel simultaneously so small and so noticed. He handed her a small box. Confused, she opened it to find a delicate gold bracelet with a single charm. A tiny star. For you, he said simply. A reminder that even in darkness, you still shine. Her hands shook as she fastened it around her wrist. Why are you so kind? She whispered. Because kindness is a luxury most people can't afford, he said, eyes glinting. And I can. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and intimate. She wanted to speak, to ask questions about who he really was. But fear tangled with desire, leaving her tongue tied. Then, unexpectedly, he took her hand. Not a harsh grip. Not a claim. But a careful, gentle hold that made her pulse spike. You're not afraid? She asked, voice barely audible. Afraid of what? He countered, his thumb brushing her knuckles. Of you, she admitted softly. Kong Miho's smile was almost imperceptible, but it reached his eyes. Good, he said. You should be. They walked to the deck's edge, wind whipping through her curls, city lights reflecting in her eyes. She could feel the tension coiling around him, the danger radiating from every line of his body. And yet the warmth of his hand anchored her. You shouldn't trust me, he said quietly. I'm not the kind of man anyone should fall for. Nia's heart stuttered. Then why am I not scared? Because you see something I don't show anyone, he murmured. You see through the masks. And you make me want to be better than the man the world thinks I am. Her breath caught. His words struck her like lightning, leaving her dizzy and disoriented. This dangerous, untouchable man was vulnerable before her. As the night deepened, they talked. Not about business. Not about the world outside. But about life. Loss. Loneliness. Kong Miho told her fragments of his past, carefully, selectively. About his mother. About the pain of growing up under a father who had no love to give. About the emptiness he'd learned to carry like armor. Nia shared pieces of her own story. The heartbreaks. The loneliness in a foreign city. The men who'd used her for curiosity or sport. And as they talked, the distance between them shrank. When the city clock struck 10, Kong Miho finally broke the silence. I want to take you somewhere else. A quiet place where no one can judge you. Where you can be yourself. Her pulse raced. And if I refuse? He tilted his head slightly, studying her. Then I'll wait. But I hope you won't. By the end of the night, Nia realized she'd forgotten everything else. The loneliness. The heartbreak. The pain that had haunted her for months. In its place, there was this strange, terrifying, exhilarating feeling. She was falling. Falling for a man she barely knew. A man who could destroy her with a word, yet had chosen instead to show her kindness, attention, and something else. Something dangerous yet intoxicating. The drive back was quiet. Kong Miho didn't speak much, letting her thoughts wander, letting the city lights blur past them. And when he dropped her off, he didn't kiss her. Didn't even linger. But his hand brushed hers for a fleeting second, sending shivers down her spine. Good night, Nia, he said finally. Good night, she whispered, barely breathing. After he left, she sat on her bed, staring at the gold bracelet on her wrist. Her heart still raced. Her mind still whirled. And deep down she knew something undeniable had begun tonight. A connection forged in loneliness, curiosity, and an inexplicable pull toward a man who was dangerous and unforgettable. And somehow, she didn't want it to end. Nia hadn't slept all night. The memory of Kong Miho's hand brushing hers in the Lamborghini. The weight of his gaze. The way his voice had spoken to her as if reading her very soul. It replayed endlessly in her mind. Her small apartment felt suffocating now. Too quiet. Too empty. For the first time in months, she felt alive and terrified simultaneously. Her phone buzzed softly. A message from Kong Miho. Meet me at the Han River Private Marina at 7. Don't be late. She hesitated. Fear warred with curiosity. She didn't know what awaited her. What kind of man truly existed behind the cold, charming mask? And yet something inside her, a spark she hadn't felt in years, pushed her forward. By 7 p.m., Nia stood at the marina, city lights reflecting on the river like liquid fire. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of the river mixed with distant street food aromas. And there he was, waiting as always, leaning casually against a sleek black car that gleamed under the lamplight. "On time," he said simply, his eyes scanning her face as if noting every detail. She swallowed hard. "I didn't know what this was," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Kang Mi-ho stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough to make her pulse race. "Neither do I," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "But I want you to see something. Something that matters to me." Curiosity surged, overriding her fear. "What is it?" He smiled faintly and opened the car door for her. The interior smelled of leather and cologne. "Trust me," he said. They drove through the city, lights blurring past the windows. Finally, they arrived at a massive private estate hidden behind high walls and security. Nia's heart stuttered. She began, but words failed her. "This is where I live," he said simply. "I don't usually bring people here. But you deserve to see me fully. Not just glimpses." The estate was lavish yet understated. Intimidating. Marble floors. Modern furniture. Subtle artwork. And the faint hum of security cameras. A world she could never have imagined. Nia's pulse raced. The danger she'd felt outside her apartment seemed magnified tenfold here, but mingled with it was undeniable thrill. Kang Mi-ho guided her to a balcony overlooking a private courtyard. Moonlight spilled across the space, casting long shadows. He leaned against the railing, watching her with those inscrutable eyes. "You're scared," he said quietly, almost as if reading her mind. "I shouldn't be here," she admitted softly. "I don't belong in this world." He smiled. A slow, teasing curve of lips that made her chest tighten. "No one belongs in my world," he said. "But tonight, I want you to belong somewhere. Here. With me. Even if just for a moment." Her throat went dry. She wanted to speak. To ask the questions that screamed in her mind. Who is he really? How did he find me? Why me? But the words caught in her chest. Instead, she nodded. Dinner was served in a private room. Soft candlelight flickering against walls lined with books and artwork. The food was exquisite. Flavors delicate yet bold. Nia ate slowly, tasting each bite as if savoring a dream. "You eat too quickly sometimes," Kang Mi-ho remarked casually, eyes watching her. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "Everything about this. About you. It's so overwhelming." He chuckled softly. A rare, low sound that seemed almost gentle. "Good," he said. "I want tonight to overwhelm you. In a good way." She felt her face heat. And, for a moment, she imagined what that could mean. Not just the food, the estate, or the city view. But him. The dangerous pull he carried. After dinner, Kang Mi-ho led her to a small library. The room smelled faintly of old leather and sandalwood. He gestured to a chair by the fireplace. "Sit," he said. She did, heart racing. He perched on the table's edge opposite her, leaning forward. Firelight flickered across his face, highlighting the sharp lines of his jaw, the tattoos curling up his neck, the dark depth of his eyes. "I've never met anyone like you," he said quietly. "You're fearless even in your fear. Honest even in your pain. And despite everything, you still reach for connection. That's rare." Her chest tightened. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," he replied. "Just listen." For hours they talked. About life. About loneliness. About love and loss. Kang Mi-ho shared glimpses of the man he'd become. The walls he'd built around himself. The people he'd lost. The darkness he'd embraced. And Nia, in turn, shared the heartbreaks she'd endured in Korea. The men who'd used her. And the emptiness she'd carried since arriving. Every word drew them closer. Every glance tightened the invisible thread binding them. She felt safe and terrified all at once, caught between fascination and fear. Finally, Kang Mi-ho rose and approached her. Slow, deliberate. He extended a hand. "Dance with me," he said quietly. "I don't know how," she whispered. "I'll guide you," he said simply, and took her hands in his. The first notes of soft jazz began to play from a small speaker, filling the room. And as they moved together, hesitant at first, then gradually more fluidly, Nia felt something she hadn't felt in years. Warmth. Safety. Belonging. He didn't try to kiss her. He didn't try to claim her. He simply held her, guiding her in the dance, letting her lean against him, letting her feel wanted without pressure. When the music ended, he stepped back slightly, still holding her gaze. "You're extraordinary," he said softly. "And I want to know every part of you. But I won't rush. Not now. Not ever." Her throat went dry. She nodded, overwhelmed by the intensity of his words, the weight of his presence. She wanted to speak, to tell him how she felt, but fear and awe kept her silent. "Tonight," he said quietly, "is only the beginning. Remember that." And with that, he led her back to the car. Silent but close. His hand brushing hers in a fleeting, electric touch. Back in her apartment later, Nia lay awake, silver moonlight spilling across her bed. Her thoughts spun endlessly. About the estate, the firelit library, the dance, and the pull of a man who was dangerous yet tender, commanding yet careful. She traced the outline of the bracelet he'd given her, the tiny star catching the light. And deep down, she knew one terrifying, thrilling truth. She was falling for a man who could destroy her life in an instant. And she didn't care. Because for the first time in a long time, she felt alive. Hello, beautiful souls. And just like that, Nia's lonely night turned into a shock she never saw coming. A Lamborghini, a mysterious man, and a life she never imagined. But is this the start of true love or something far more dangerous? Find out in episode 2. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share.